What's going on, friends? So October has been a pretty packed month. We had Halloween, the start of fall, Oktoberfest, even Chucky the Killer Doll gets its own holiday. Wait, that's a real thing? Okay, well if Chucky gets its own holiday, then I'm pretty sure we can get away with inventing our own months-long celebration. This month was so full of great co-op games that we had no choice but to institute a whole new holiday called Co-Optober. Whether you celebrate it in force or are late to the party, help us end Co-Optober with a bang by going over all the co-op games that came out last month, what co-op games are coming out in the next month, and any co-op news in between. It's the Co-op Monthly for October, but you already knew that, so let's get started.
Let's start by covering the co-op games that came out last month, and it looks like developers caught wind of Co-Optober because we had a killer release schedule. We covered Wargroove 2 last monthly because reviews dropped a little bit early, but for those who missed it, the game got a mighty 84 from the critics. The general idea is this is just more of Wargroove, an already excellent spiritual successor to Advance Wars, but with a fun roguelike campaign mode thrown on top. Now notably, there was no co-op campaign at launch, relegating our preferred method of play to one-off skirmishes. Hopefully this gets remedied with a DLC drop like the first title had with the wonderful Double Trouble DLC. We're not the only ones thinking that, with the game sitting a few ticks lower by Steam users at a mostly positive 75%. Lieutenant Randuel echoed my thoughts best with his comment highlighting the need for a co-op campaign. We salute you, Lieutenant Randuel. Thank you for standing strong this Co-Optober. The long-awaited Lords of the Fallen is here, and we finally get to see if the game can live up to its premise. Is this the seamless co-op experience we wanted? Well, sort of. Critics gave it a fair 73, and users have it sitting at a pretty rough mixed 60% on Steam. I kind of feel that. Gabe and I have played a fair chunk ourselves, and while the game does some really cool stuff with the dual world design and build diversity, it has its fair share of issues. The biggest one being that the game has been struggling from a technical standpoint, especially in co-op. I mean, it got choppy. Well, the devs have been listening and have already dropped a pretty meaty patch as early as last week that adds crossplay, really love to see that, removes enemy density, also love to see that, and helps with overall stability. We're keen to get our thoughts out on this overall experience, but here's the general gist so we can move on. If you like playing the Souls games in co-op, I think you're gonna like this. It does a few things to modernize the experience without going all the way, which would have been nice. But it's not a From Software game, and that shows in its level design, enemy design, boss design, all of the above. So there's your mini reviews. Stick around and subscribe to hopefully hear more on that soon. Sonic Superstars is the most Sonic thing it could possibly have done and release its biggest title of the year the same week as the first 2D Mario game in several years. Really, Sonic? It's done alright for itself though, with critics coming together for a fair 74, and users not too far behind with a mixed 68%. Thankfully, the IGN review did give us their thoughts on the co-op, and they described the experience clever at its best and frustrating at its worst when playing with a friend. Overall, our point we always made about the camera being an issue was their biggest pain point too, so I can't say I'm too surprised. Good on the devs for including co-op, but would have liked to have seen it implemented with a little bit more care. After so many delays, we finally got Wizard with a Gun, and I can confirm that it's true because Gabe and I have started playing it ourselves. We're only about 2 hours in, so we can't give a strong verdict, but I'll say this. The game has some nice survival mechanics, the 5-minute roguelike system keeps you engaged, and I can really see how the crafting system can make for synergistic builds. However, the co-op has no shared progression, so you'll have to pick one of you to be the host, and that's a little bit of a bummer. Outside of us, the game is sitting at a strong 76 with critics, with IGN specifically mentioning how the game feels much better balanced and more fun in co-op. It's a little bit higher with the fans at an 82% very positive on Steam, so that's a plus. But yeah, if you want to hear more from us, you'll have to stick around, so here's my second chance to say like and subscribe, and I'm allowed to do that because it's Co-Optober. Similar to Wizard with a Gun, we've been waiting a long time for Endless Dungeon, and hey, Gabe, Jake, and I have put in another 2 hours here on this one as well. Again, early impressions, but we love what we played. The tower defense aspect adds a ton of fun strategy to discuss with your co-op partners, and the actual gameplay is super solid. It's a little higher than the last few games we mentioned with a 79 on OpenCritic, but a surprisingly 68% mix on Steam. I know there's been a ton of hullabaloo about shared progression, but I actually think that aspect is totally fine. You share like 90% of progression, and what you don't share is easy to make up or just is pretty superfluous. But hey, if you want to hear more, you'll have to stick around by liking and subscribe. Okay, sorry, that was probably one too many even for the special occasion. So far in Co-Optober, we've had a list of fine games, some real solid 7 or 8 out of 10ers. but what we really need this time of year is a Game of the Year contender. And I'm not talking about any old Game of the Year, I'm talking about Co-op Game of the Year. And wait, I'm hearing from the editor that a game did in fact drop this month that fits the bill. Yes, that's right, the game is none other than Return to Moria? Nah, I'm just kidding, it's Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now you've already probably heard that this game is everything we want it to be, and that shows when you get a 92 on OpenCritic. But Gabe and I actually played through half of the game in local co-op, and we gotta say, this isn't just a regular old banger, but a co-op banger too. There was pretty much no minute during our playthrough that we were not having fun. Now we still need to try out the online before we can deliver a more full verdict, but if the online can deliver, this is pushing itself way up on our top 10 co-op games list of the year. In other words, if you haven't yet, go play some Mario Wonder with your friends. Alright, so admittedly I did return to Moria a little dirty there, but it is our lowest rated co-op game in Co-Optober with a fair 66. It's still early, only a few reviews are in, and a 4 from IGN is really pulling it down. But still, only one reviewer in the bunch has a real positive experience with the game, and that's disappointing to see. I'll let notoriously hard-nosed PC gamer sum it up with Tom Sykes' verdict of a 58 out of 100, where he said, "Don't be a fool of a toque and rush into Moria, an authentic and authentically grueling game." Not sure I pronounced toque right there, but I'm taking his word seriously and running back to Deep Rock Galactic, a dwarf game that I can stand by, and maybe a little bit more on that one later.
With the year winding down, you tend to see less games releasing, but November does have a couple games coming out, one which we're pretty stoked about, so let's dive into it. The original For the King was one of the first games we reviewed on the channel, and it remains an indie darling in our minds, so as you can imagine, we're pretty stoked to finally get to play For the King 2 on November 2nd. We had the chance to preview the game earlier this year, and we loved all the subtle new mechanics and updated art style. This one will feature 4-player online co-op at launch and is releasing on Steam. The first game did feature local co-op and also launch on other platforms, so I'm assuming the sequel will follow suit in time. Releasing that same day is Gangs of Sherwood. This is a 4-player online co-op action-adventure title based in the world of Robin Hood, but with like a more gritty take on that story. You play as 4 different characters, each with their own unique movesets, and it looks like the gameplay is very combo-based, which looks kinda cool. Really curious to see what people think of this game. I can't quite tell if it's gonna be good or not, honestly. Regardless, look forward to playing it on all platforms bar the Switch. But don't worry, Switch players, November has a brand new title coming your way on November 3rd, and it features everyone's favorite greedy plumber, Wario. WarioWare Move It is a brand new WarioWare title featuring 4-player local co-op, and this time it's all about wacky motion control party games similar to 1-2-Switch. For $50 US, I'm hoping this entry has more content than the last, considering we beat WarioWare Get It Together in like about 2 hours. Lastly, we have Roboquest leaving early access on November 7th. This is a first-person roguelike shooter featuring 2-player co-op online, and it's been in early access since 2020. That's a pretty long time, so I'm assuming the game will have a good amount of content and hopefully come out pretty polished too. Roguelikes make for like really good co-op games, so I encourage you guys to check this one out when it launches on Steam and Xbox Series consoles.
Alright, it's time to cover all the news we received this Co-Optober, and while it is light, there's a super fun game announcement at the end that I think you're all gonna love. In hopes to maybe capture the magic of spooky season, Redfall got its second major update after its terrible launch. They finally have delivered on the 60 FPS promise, added more enemy density to the lifeless open world, and tried to improve that floaty gunplay. At the end of the day though, Redfall was such a bad base game that I don't see these updates turning it around. If you're still waiting to play, I'd either keep waiting or browse our channel to find something else to look forward to. Trust me, there's gonna be something better out there. Similarly, Diablo 4 is banking on spooky season to bring back the players to its massive ARPG franchise. For those who haven't followed, Diablo 4 launched really well, garnering great critic reviews and a ton of players, and hey, Gabe and I gave it a really positive co-op review. But since then, things have been pretty rough. A few updates that threw off the game's balance and upset the hardcore fans, plus a lackluster season of The Malignant have drove the game to near extinction, with Diablo 3 regularly clearing its player count over its successor. In the Season of Blood, Diablo 4 looks to right the ship, and what's that? Paul Tassi, my go-to guy for all things live service, says yes, you should come back to Diablo 4 for Season 2? Well, that's good enough for me. Okay, well wait, we should talk about what's in the new season. It started on October 18th and includes a new seasonal questline, vampiric powers to play with because, you know, vampires and blood, and a new in-game boss, plus a huge host of quality of life improvements. Essentially, in Paul's article, which you should totally go read, it says that the progression is much faster and is making the overall experience way more enjoyable. Plus, the new vampire-specific zone has some awesome loot drops. So hopefully he's right and Diablo 4 can use this as the beginning of a better long-term seasonal model because what we played was really fun. Another spooky season update worth mentioning here is for Outlast Trials, which received another map in the courthouse. Take a courthouse, add tons of blood and gore and horror, and you're on the right track because we're talking about Outlast. This is a sizable update because a new map comes with a lot of replayability. We're inching closer to that 1.0 launch when Gabe and I will triumphantly return for a full review, and we might have a better idea when that's going to happen thanks to a sneaky comment by the team saying the game will be coming to consoles sometime in early 2024. If it's coming to consoles, it'll be in 1.0, so consider that your new launch window. Speaking of sneaky comments, Larian Studios' director of publishing Michael Dowse answered an angry Xbox fan's tweet confirming the Xbox port of the game will be out before the end of the year. Kind of a weird way for that to come out, but that's the internet for you. Keeping the trend of weird ways to announce things going, after releasing a quality of life patch to long-running co-op shooter Alien Fireteam Elite, developer Cold Irons also decided to mention they'll continue to send out these fixes while working on their next major project, the first we've heard of that. Would love to see a follow-up to Fireteam Elite, an often overlooked co-op horde shooter, or at least something of that vein, because I think these guys are good at that. And if you're wondering about the patch notes, it added crossplay and fixed some server issues, which is cool to see over 2 years after launch. Got a couple of bummer news bits to deliver, so I'll try to make it quick. Second Extension, another horde co-op shooter but focused on dinosaurs, is shutting off servers next year and has taken the game off the storefronts. That means that unless you own it already, it's now unplayable, and once those servers are down, it'll be unplayable for owners too. Developers quoted an inability for their small team to meet quality standards after running into critical and show-stopping issues, their words not mine. This really stinks because this game has been in early access since 2020 and was set to launch into 1.0 this year. If you watched our recent review of Payday 3, you'll have seen that the developers recently came out to apologize that they had gone radio silent and struggled to deliver a key patch. The transparency was nice, but we're still disappointed, especially seeing as the patch was supposed to deliver mid-October and was going to address the frustrating progression system that was our main knock on the game's co-op systems. If you want to hear more about Payday 3, be sure to check out our review on it. I think we did a good job at covering what has turned out to be a very nuanced and complicated game.
Outside of those updates Andrew just went over, the rest of our news block is pretty slim. We got a couple updates for upcoming titles and one new game announcement, so I'll just knock these out real quick so we can wrap this up. Even the best development teams can struggle, and that seems to be the case at Naughty Dog, with reports coming in that The Last of Us multiplayer game is reportedly cancelled or at least put on ice. This is a huge bummer for us as we're both huge fans of the Last of Us franchise, and the idea of a co-op or dedicated multiplayer title sounded like a dream come true. If they can't crack the code though, it's probably for the best, and I'd rather the team work on a new game than ship a broken one. Last Epoch is an online co-op action RPG that's generated some positive buzz over the last couple years while in early access, and it recently got a 1.0 release date for February 21st of next year. I remember this having an expansive class system, so maybe this can be a good alternative to Diablo 4 if that game wasn't quite doing it for you. We got a brand new look at some co-op gameplay for Little Nightmares 3, and I gotta tell you, I loved everything about this 18-minute slice of the game, especially this giant creepy doll chasing you around the whole level. I never played any of these games, but it looks like a co-op Limbo where it's mostly a platformer puzzle game, adding some very creepy vibes, and I'm totally here for that. Hoping we get a release date for this real soon. Maybe our boy Jeff will come through at the Game Awards. For Rock and Stone, my friends, we got a brand new Deep Rock game coming our way called Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core, and it looks so freaking cool. This is a 4-player online co-op roguelike launching onto early access sometime next year. This felt like so inevitable to me. The world of Deep Rock is so perfect for a roguelike game, and I can't wait to get our band together to check this one out. And that's all for this monthly. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and following us on our socials for more co-op content. We're playing like so many games right now: Endless Dungeon, Wizard with a Gun, Lords of the Fallen, and of course Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So expect a ton of videos coming real soon, and come hang out with us on some live streams in the meantime. Until then, we'll catch you next time on another episode of the Co-op Bros.